The B-29 was one of the largest aircraft to see service during World War II. The B-29 Superfortress is a four-engine propeller-driven heavy bomber designed by Boeing that was flown primarily by the United States in late World War II. A very advanced bomber for this time period, it included features such as a pressurized cabin, an electronic fire control system, and remote-controlled machine gun turrets. The name Superfortress was derived from that of its well-known predecessor, the B-17 Flying Fortress. Although considered for other areas, the B-29 was exclusively used in the Pacific theater during World War II. The B-29 was designed as a high-altitude daytime bomber, but in practice it actually flew more low-altitude nighttime incendiary bombing missions. It was the primary aircraft in the American firebombing campaign against the Empire of Japan in the final months of World War II, and carried out the atomic bombings that destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Boeing began work on pressurized long-range bombers in 1938 when it produced a pressurized derivative of the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress with nose-wheel undercarriage. Manufacturing the B-29 was a complex task. It involved 4 main assembly factories. Thousands of subcontractors were involved in the project. Changes to the production craft came so often and so fast that many B-29s flew from the production lines directly to modification depots to incorporate the latest changes. The most common cause of maintenance headaches and catastrophic failures was the 2,200 horsepower turbo-supercharged radial engines. Although the radial engines later became a trustworthy workhorse in large piston-engined aircraft, early models were beset with dangerous reliability problems. This problem was not fully solved until the aircraft was fitted with more powerful Pratt & Whitney engines, which arrived too late for World War II. The modification depots struggled to cope with the scale of work required, such that at the end of 1943, although 100 aircraft had been delivered, only 15 were airworthy. Pilots flying B-29s describe flight after takeoff as being an urgent struggle for airspeed. Generally, flight after takeoff should consist of striving for altitude. Radial engines need airflow to keep them cool, and failure to get up to speed as soon as possible could result in an engine failure and risk of fire. The first ever cabin pressure system for an Allied production bomber was developed for the B-29. The nose and the cockpit were pressurized. The bomb bays were not pressurized. The B-29 was capable of flight up to 31,850 feet, at speeds of up to 350 miles per hour. This was its best defense because Japanese fighters of that day could barely get that high. Only the heaviest of anti-aircraft weapons could reach it, so hitting or damaging the aircraft from the ground was next to impossible. The B-29's revolutionary central fire control system included 4 remotely controlled turrets armed with 250 caliber machine guns each. All weapons were aimed electronically from sighting stations. The computers also allowed a single gunner to operate 2 or more turrets simultaneously. The first B-29 combat mission was flown on the 5th of June 1944. On the 15th of June 1944, B-29s took off for the first attack on the Japanese mainland since the Doolittle raid in April of 1942. The first mission against Japan from bases in the Marianas was flown on the 24th of November 1944, when 111 B-29s were sent to attack Tokyo. From that point on, raids were launched regularly until the end of the war. These attacks succeeded in devastating almost all large Japanese cities, and gravely damaged Japan's war industries. Perhaps the most famous B-29 is the Enola Gay, which dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima on the 6th of August 1945. Boxcar, another B-29, dropped the second atomic bomb on Nagasaki 3 days later. These 2 actions, along with the Soviet invasion of Manchuria on the 9th of August 1945, brought about the Japanese surrender and the official end of World War II. While the end of World War II caused production of the B-29 to be phased out, with the last unit completed on the 28th of May 1946, and with many aircraft sent for storage, and ultimately scrapping as surplus. The B-29 was soon made obsolete by the development of jet-engined aircraft. With the arrival of the mammoth conveyor B-36, the B-29 was reclassified as a medium bomber. The final active-duty variants were phased out in the mid-1960s, with a total of 3,970 B-29s built. 22 B-29s are preserved at various museums worldwide, but only one flying model is still operational today.